Okay, I think we can get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Alexander, and I'm the owner of Realty Collective, a stereotyping real estate firm that tries to um, break the stereotypes associated with real estate in New York City. I'm going to stop saying we're basically your coach, your therapist, your sounding board, helping you through the process and the emotional roller coaster of buying New York City real estate. And I'm going to introduce my co-hosts, Lisa and Rashida. Lisa Yanchi is from Cross Country Mortgage, and Rashida Sadiq is a New York City and New Jersey real estate attorney. And I'm going to let Rashida, why don't you take it away?
Good evening, everyone. Nice to hopefully have a great conversation today about real estate. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I have been practicing real estate going on about 19 years now. I do primarily residential. So if you're looking to buy, I represent a lot of first-time buyers. I'm licensed in both New York and New Jersey. And basically to tell you about the process of what your role as an attorney should be to get you through that process. We're normally the ones that you come in at the end once your offer's been accepted, but we're hopefully there to make sure the contract is right and that you get to your closing table and you get those keys. So your attorney is very important to hopefully guide you through that last step of once you find your property.
And take it away, Lisa.
Hey everyone, my name's Lisa. I am a loan officer at Cross Country Mortgage. I've been in the mortgage world for about 6 years. Before that, I was in academia, so that's sort of a different story. But I love working with first-time home buyers. About 90% of my business is New York City condos and co-ops. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about all the intricacies and getting the funding needed to buy a home. And I'll be focusing mostly on Brooklyn and New York City properties, but I do mortgages all over the country. So we can talk about that as well during the chat if you'd like.
Great. Thanks so much, Lisa. My name is Victoria Alexander, and I started Realty Collective 16 years ago. Like I said before, to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate. My role is your coach. I help you through the process. It is a long, emotional process with highs and lows, and being prepared and setting expectations is the best way to make it through without losing your mind and ending up owning a home here in Brooklyn. I've worked with Lisa and Rashida now combined for almost 2 decades. Sounds crazy to say out loud. And it's really important to me to work with other strong women especially in this field that, tends sometimes to be male dominated. What you need to get started. We're going to start with slide 1 and building your team. And the 3 people you definitely need to get things going, which is a buyer's broker. It costs nothing to have a buyer's broker. The cost of having one is baked into the deal. And regardless if you have one or not, the seller is paying for that person. So it is in your benefit to always have a buyer's broker. Even if you think, oh, well, I'm going to save the seller money. It never works out that way. And everybody ends up leaving money on the table. So just realize that it costs you nothing to have someone represent for you and work for you, and look out for and have a fiduciary responsibility to you. When you walk into a listing that is represented by the seller's broker, their fiduciary responsibility is to the seller, and they work for the seller, and they don't owe you anything, even though they're really nice to you. Other people that you need to introduce you to is your real estate attorney, who's going to make sure that all the due diligence docs and everything is in order and there's no red flags on the property that you should be concerned about. And your mortgage professional, which is going to get you pre-approval and a bank to say yes to you. Next slide. You should interview all these people and make sure you feel comfortable with them. You're a person to be served, and that they should make you feel like you understand their answers to your questions, that they're available, and at least is going to make sure that that you ask them if they have good turn times to make sure that your loan's going to get closed. Why buy now? So the rent's too damn high. You want your own design. You You want to have long-term investment, equity. You're renting right now, you're giving all of that money away. You don't get to write it off for taxes unless you're working from home and using part of it, a very small portion of it you get to write off as a home office. So if you're going to be spending $3,000-$4,000 a month on rent, why aren't you spending $3,000 or $4,000 towards a mortgage that you're going to see a return on that investment? It's such a good time to buy right now because interest rates are so low. We've never seen renting and buying so close to each other that your buying power is so strong. So it's an excellent time to be buying. Next slide. We have this resource that we always send to people that it is not ours. It is the New York Times. It is the rent versus buy matrix. You can put in how long you've been in New York, how long you plan to stay in New York, what your rent is, what your salary is, and they're going to tell you if it's a good time for you to buy or to keep renting. Because in some situations, if you have a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment, it's may not be worth it for you to buy something. But I would say that if you are planning on not staying in that tiny apartment or situation, you should definitely consider thinking about and staying. You plan on staying in New York at least for 5 years. You should consider staying, buying something. The link to that will be in the chat. So previous to the big three that I mentioned earlier, your attorney, your buyer's broker, and your lawyer, the other people that you might need for a transaction are an inspector. If you're buying a condo or a house, you definitely need an inspector. Co-op, it depends on a couple different things. I always encourage people, even if they're buying a co-op, to get an inspection. You might need a contractor to give you some quotes on doing some work. You might need an architect. And we have all these professionals, a roster of them that we can share with you that we vetted and can say that these are good people to at least have conversations with and see if they're the right ones for you. I'm going to pass it to Lisa because the first person you talk to, everybody always wants to talk to me first and get their search going so that their inbox is like full of beautiful apartments that they are going to dream over. But really, before we even set up your search criteria, we need to know what your buying power is. We need to know what a bank is going to tell you that they will give you a loan for. So that's why you need to talk to Lisa first. And Lisa, I'm going to let you talk about the first stages of talking.
Okay, sorry, I think could you guys hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay, good. My computer froze for a minute. My internet's being a little finicky, but okay, let's do this. So yes, the first person you need to talk to is me. And the reason that is because you need to know how much you can be pre-approved for. You don't want to look at properties that are over your budget. You also don't want to shortchange yourself and saying, oh, I can only afford a $300,000 mortgage when maybe you can afford more than that. And then that's up to you if you want the higher mortgage or not. So the very first person you need to talk to is a mortgage professional. Mortgage is actually a very personal experience. So when we talk, I'm going to get a lot of information from you so I can figure out the best product for you and what your concerns are. So I'm going to talk to you about your employment. I'm going to talk to you about your debt. I'm going to talk to you about the kind of place you're looking at, the kind of purchase price you think you have. And then you're going to give me some documentation and we're going to run the numbers. And what I always tell people is that pre-approval, it's a working draft. So as you see things with Victoria, we can fine tune what exactly that pre-approval is going to look like before you put in an offer. And all offers now are requiring a pre-approval. So you need to get this done anyway. So it's better to get it done now than get it done later. Some of the things that we're going to look at when we get you pre-approved. So there's a whole bunch of different mortgage products. So conventionally, you put 20% down. Sometimes people do 10% down, conventional. That typically works unless most co-ops require 20%. But that's really great because right now, along with mortgage rates being really low, mortgage insurance is really low. So a lot of my clients are finding that very attractive. There's also FHA, which is a great program that allows you to only put 3.5% down. Typically with FHA, you're looking at more like single or multifamily homes rather than condos or co-ops. As you talk to a mortgage professional, there's a bunch of things you want to make sure you're checking off. So you want to make sure that you're working with someone that knows New York City real estate. Run away from Quicken as far as possible. They are great if you're buying a single family home, you know, in the middle of the country. I mean, I think we're better, but I can understand talking to them. But if you're talking about New York City real estate, they just don't understand it because New York City functions different than every place else. Similarly, if you're looking for a condo or co-op, you need to work with someone that understands condos and especially co-ops. Again, they're totally different. A test case I always tell people is when you're talking to people and you're looking at a co-op, when you're talking to a mortgage professional, ask them, hey, what are the closing costs like for a co-op? If they say $10,000 or $20,000, they don't know what they're talking about. They're thinking it's a condo. Run away from that person. A co-op closing cost should typically be before your attorney and whatever the co-op requires for reserves, just on the mortgage end. It's usually around $400 to $4,500, give or take. So those are some. It's just really important that when you find someone you like, you know, what I tell everyone is that it's great if you go out tomorrow and you find the place of your dreams and you get your accepted offer. That's amazing. But I have clients I've been working with for 2, 3, 6 months, 2 years that, you know, so this is a long relationship and you need to make sure you have someone that sort of understands you and understands what you're looking for and how to get you there. Last thing I'll just mention is a lot of the COVID restrictions are starting to lighten up now. We're starting to do in-person closings. Appraisals are happening really well. The two things to think about as you're getting pre-qualified is if you're self-employed, there are some restrictions now with COVID because so many businesses had a really tough time last year. That doesn't mean you can't get pre-approved. That means that we need to have a conversation and you need to, you know, we'll need to look at your tax returns. There's a lot of self-employed borrowers I have that, you know, we work so that when they're ready to file their taxes for the following year, they're ready to go to, or if they're on extension now, they're ready to go for when they get pre-qualified. There was one last thing I was going to say, self-employed. Really, really important. When you're looking to get a mortgage, there's a few things you do not do. You do not buy a car, or I've had a client who bought a boat. Don't do those kind of things when you're looking to buy a property. Do not leave your job. We're qualifying you based on your income. If you leave your job, you need to talk to me before you do that if you still want to buy something. And so just realize that there's a lot of balls in the air and you need to make sure that you're working with someone that you have a pretty good relationship with so that as your life changes, that doesn't mean you can't get a place. That just means you need to keep your mortgage professional in the loop.
Thanks, Lisa. You know, the other thing that I like to always say about not only working with a local mortgage firm and person that understands co-ops and condos is the same thing for lawyers. Like everybody in here probably knows someone that's a lawyer. There's just many different kinds of lawyers and they practice and specialize in different things. You want a New York City real estate attorney that understands the New York City real estate market. Co-ops and condos are complex. I've had too many people hire their uncle or cousin because, you know, they were going to look out for them, and they sometimes end up looking out for you too much and start taking on different people's roles in the actual transaction. And when you're working with seasoned professionals, everybody knows how to stay in their lane and work together. That's why, you know, me, Lisa, and Rashida, we do a lot of deals together. We have such great communication. We can always check in with each other and hold each other accountable and know that we're all working towards the same goal. When I work with somebody that I don't have such a long relationship with, things can go awry and I can't speak to that person in the way I would speak to Lisa or Rashida, and because they don't work for me. At the end of the day, we all work for you, the buyer. And if I don't have a relationship with the other people on our team, it's harder for me to have a very transparent conversation about what we all need to do to get to the same goal that we're all working towards. The other thing that I was going to say, I agree with Lisa on the Quicken, Rocket Mortgage. Please stay away from all of those. They might have competitive rates on the internet, but at the end of the day, they cost you. And also be really clear with the fees and costs associated with hiring a mortgage professional and a lawyer. My client, again, that didn't use, somebody that I recommended, and their deal fell apart and they still got a bill for $4,000 from their lawyer, even though the transaction wasn't even consummated, because they switched middle of the deal and started charging them hourly because it was a complex deal. And they were very frustrated. And I said, this is why, I have a vetted list of people that I know are going to charge you the rates that are appropriate for deals, that I'm working on. So where do you search? Next slide, please. Where do people search? I'm sure that people are looking on StreetEasy. You're looking on Trulia. You're looking on Zillow. Zillow owns StreetEasy. People are maybe looking on Realtor.com. And, the internet has changed where we look at things. It's made the transaction and the listing process a lot more transparent. So there aren't pocket listings. There's not a lot of off-market listings. Brokers who are members of REBNY, which is the Real Estate Board of New York, all work together. And so I have access to all the listings that Corcoran has, that Compass has, because they're all part of the RLS, the multiple listing server that is here in New York City. And, Zillow is also now a real estate broker. So when you're writing to anybody through those platforms, they are, especially Zillow, trying to represent you. And you want to make sure that when you're looking for a buyer's broker, lawyer, anybody, that you're vetting these people and you're making a conscious decision. It's not because you clicked a button on the internet and a random person was partnered with you and selected for you. So we really recommend StreetEasy for right now, and we'll see if they change as they go into get more Zillow dominated. But I really like StreetEasy as a public facing platform. As a real estate broker, I have access to a back end, the RLS, that clients don't have access to. And it actually has listings on there that are not on StreetEasy. Because everybody that is a REBNY member, all of our listings go into this back end platform that's only for real estate brokers. When we start working together, I aggregate all the results for you and start sending you listings, get you COVID forms. Now there aren't a lot of open houses. There are just up by appointment showings where we have to submit a bunch of documents for COVID for each client and have a designated time that you're allowed to show up. So everything's by appointment over. The days are over of off-market listings. I went over that. And to keep in mind again that the seller's agent represents the final financial best interest of the sellers and not the buyers. Some people think that they can streamline things by not working with that agent, but in reality, they don't have your best interest at heart, and you can end up losing money, time, energy, and the emotional roller coaster by making sure that you find someone that's going to advocate for you. You want someone in your corner that has gone through this experience enough times that they are going to prepare you for every step of the way and keep you from pitfalls that lay ahead of you. The cost of the buyer's broker is included in the closing costs on either side of the transaction, whether you're a buyer or the seller. And sellers are prepared already to pay this amount. So what are you looking for? Next slide. Location. If you want to be in a doorman building, what neighborhood are you looking in? Probably not Williamsburg. Probably not Park Slope. I would say North Slope, Prospect Heights, Brooklyn Heights. Old pre-war buildings usually have doorman buildings. If you want something that's new construction, where are you looking? Williamsburg, Bushwick, Bed-Stuy has a lot of new construction. Depending on the things that you are looking for is going to steer and weigh into some of the other amenities and things you are hoping to find in your new property. If you want something that has washer, dryer, and unit, if you want something that has dishwasher, allows pets, doesn't have any rules that you could rent it out, you're probably not looking for a co-op. So finding your dream home is a process of thinking about the building typology, the location, and the amenities that you want. Taking those all things into consider, then we set up for your search. And sometimes people want to look at like 10 different neighborhoods and we have to narrow it down because you don't know. I don't know a lot about Fort Greene. I don't know a lot about Bushwick. You have to go there, spend time there. We'll go get brunch. We'll see if we like it. And then see if it will be a long-term home for you. Co-ops, you should be aware that there's 1 to 3% for closing cost average. 3 to 5% for condos. Sellers also have closing costs. They're about 8%. I went over there. And then, so I always tell people at this point, when you're thinking about where you want to live, make your 5 list of deal breakers and then realize that you can only probably have 3 of them. So outdoor space, everybody wants outdoor space right now, washer, dryer, dishwasher, close to a subway or close to a park, and more outdoor space, and takes pets. And then realize you probably, with being realistic about what your budget is, have to lose 2 of those things. So you could probably hopefully keep your dog if you already have one. So next slide, please. Making an offer and negotiating terms. Next slide. I'm going to so what happens usually is I put in an offer for a client saying, here's their offer, 800,000. It's contingent on financing, which means that if the bank is not going to give you the loan, that you have an out. So if you lose your job mid-process, if all your money is gone off of the stock market, there are certain things you can be able to back out of the contract. So your offer is contingent on financing. It's usually contingent on an inspection. And then once we come to terms with the items in the deal, then we send out deal sheets to the lawyers, and they go to Rashida, and Rashida will get the deal sheet and start doing due diligence and talking to the other lawyer. Do you want to take it away, Rashida?
Yes. So I'm normally the last person on that route of mortgage broker, realtor, your offer's been accepted, and you're right at the start of this roller coaster of closing, and hopefully 60 to 90 days, because that's typically how long it takes for a closing. Whether you're buying a house, you're looking at probably 60 days. If you're buying a co-op, it can be 90 days or longer, depending on the building. But before you even get to getting into contract, your offer has been accepted. The realtor send your attorney the deal sheet, which has a summary of that information. And then it's your attorney's turn to review the contract of sale. If you're buying a co-op or a condo, we have to do what we call as attorney due diligence, which is reviewing all of the information about the building, the board meeting minutes, getting information from the management company. Because the point of that due diligence is to make sure that even though you love the building, you love the unit, you want to know what type of property you're buying into, because you're either buying shares in a corporation or you're buying interest in a building for a condominium. And you're going to be subject to maintenance increases or common charge increases. You're sharing all of these responsibilities with other unit owners. And then your bank has to approve that co-op or that building. If you're looking at houses, you also still want to have certain terms in your contract, and you want to make sure that you're protected, because you're typically putting down either that 10% deposit, which is a lot of money you've earned, you've been saving for a long time for that, or you put down less depending on the type of loan you're getting as well. But it's still a lot of your hard-earned money that you're putting down, and you want to make sure that you're protected. So as Victoria had mentioned, one of the main contingencies in a contract is a mortgage contingency. In your contract, it has a certain time period in which you need to get that done. Typically, it's 30 or 45 days. And there's steps that have to go in through that. You have to get your appraisal during that time. Your lender has to review your documents that you're providing to them during that time. Your employment, all of those things have to be double checked. So yes, you've been pre-approved, but now the meats and bones are now coming in that commitment. And until you get that commitment, you're not in a firm contract. So it's important that you understand that time period and you understand how quickly it happens and what you need to get done. The second contingency typically in a contract for a house is getting title, which means that your seller has the right to sell you the property. There's no issues regarding the ownership, open mortgages, open judgments on the property. And that's all things you want to make sure that if there's an issue, you have a right to cancel and get the return of your deposit, because you don't want to buy a property that has a lot of issues or has any issues there. If you're buying a co-op or a condo, very important to do that due diligence, because it's very hard if you close and then the next day you find out you have a 20% increase in your common charges or a 20% increase in your maintenance, and you've kind of budgeted for your maintenance and your mortgage and things like that. And now you've bought this property with all of these issues, or you find out, hey, they're about to do a major project on the exterior or the interior of the building, and now you can't get access to the elevators for a couple of months. So all of these are things that your attorney is responsible for doing and finding out. during your due diligence. I have a situation where it's a co-op, a condo building. They don't have minutes, they don't answer questions, and all I can go about is give what information I have. And I have to tell the client, I can only give what I can get. And hopefully, this is enough to have you make a decision on whether you want to proceed with the transaction. And that's the most your attorney can do, can advise you based on the information you're getting. Because you may say, hey, I don't care. I budgeted for, potential increases because it's such a great deal in this particular building that I want it no matter what. And I understand that they may do increases in the future, but I budgeted because the common charges are $400 and I'm paying, $4,000 in rent right now. So even if they increased it, it's still within my budget. So those are things that comes out in that due diligence. Closing dates, I always tell clients, closing dates in New York are on or about date. They're not set in stone. So there's a lot of moving parts, whether you're buying a house, a co-op, or a condo. Getting your mortgage, getting the approval from the co-op, getting the condo waiver from the condo board, and then clearance to close. So we generally have this language that says on or about 60 days for a closing, for a co-op or a condo, and that on or about gives you a 30-day grace period. So you don't panic. It's your closing date in the contract, but you're not ready to close. Don't panic. You're not in default. You're not going to lose your deposit. However, for planning purposes, you also shouldn't be moving out, getting movers until your attorney or your broker says, hey, we have the clearance to close. Now you can proceed with scheduling the closing, or you've been approved by the board. So now you can schedule the closing because now everyone is on the same page with scheduling that closing. And your attorney is normally the spearhead. Once they get the okay from the broker, your lender that you're cleared, they get the okay from the co-op that you've been approved, or from the condo that the waiver has been issued. Your attorney is the one kind of guiding everyone in scheduling that closing. So very important, that mortgage contingency, that a time period to close, that due diligence. And then I'm kind of going to go back a little bit about the inspection, which is an as-is transaction. You'll probably start hearing that language a couple of times. It means that what you see is what you get. You should do your inspection, very important, because if you miss something, after you close, you can't come back and say, hey, there was that washer dryer that wasn't working. You didn't check it, or we didn't check it, you didn't do an inspection, and it never worked. You're getting a broken washer dryer. So it's important that you understand that typically contracts are as is per your inspection report. If there's repairs that have to get done, it has to be in the contract of sale. If it's not in the contract, it's not binding. Closing deals right now, we're back to doing in-person closings. I'm actually happy because it's, back to kind of seeing everyone at the table, and it's a happy experience for you. And then also the time-wise of kind of coordinating and getting everything done, and hopefully not having mistakes that are with these remote closings or closings by mail and having to deal with a lot of issues post-closing are wrapped up at the table. So your attorney scheduled that closing with all the parties. You attend in person. You'll have to get bank checks, or if you're wiring funds to your attorney. So a lot of people don't have checks anymore. Sometimes you only have online banks. So you have to have these conversations with your attorney about where your funds are as well, so they can advise you. If you have to get a bank check, you may need to transfer that into a brick and mortar account that your mortgage person obviously also knows about. You're not going to open up an account just for that, but you want to make sure that all of that is in place for your closing as well. Find a walkthrough is part of your contract as well, that you have to do that at least 48 to 24 hours prior to your closing, because you want to make sure that once again, you don't miss anything. Because once you close and you get those keys, you're now the unit owner or the homeowner, and the seller has completed their obligations under the contract. So as you can imagine, all of that, you need to make sure that you have a professional that knows what they're doing, because if they miss something, they're not familiar, they may forget to tell you about that walkthrough, or they may forget to tell you about that bank check that you have to bring, and you come with a personal check and you're like, wait, I can't close. Or you may, I've been on the other end as a seller's attorney, and I see sometimes with the mistakes that buyer attorney did not tell their client correctly. And I'm like, okay, I can't help you. I'm not your attorney, but I can try to it's easy to see how we can make this work. But it's very important that you do have an attorney that understands the process, that can guide you along the way, because you're already stressed. It's experience, and you don't want that closing date or that experience to be, not something that is memorable in a good way.
definitely you want it to be in a good way. You want it to be positive. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And when you get to the end of that finish line, you want it to feel like it's like all joy, happy, warm, fuzzy feelings. You don't want to be like, oh my God, if only this person told me this or that, I would have done things differently. I would have shown up to the closing with the right documents or the right paperwork or the right monies. And that's why it's so important that you interview people, that you hire people that have been doing this for a long time and understand the process and are going to give you the education and resources to guide you through it. The three of us have been working together for a while, and I can't advocate enough how great it is to do deals together. So I always think, you should work with us. But if you're looking in New Jersey, if you're looking upstate, happy to refer you to other people that we know and trust. If Brooklyn and/or Manhattan isn't right for you, I'm doing a deal in our office right now in Staten Island. Last year during COVID, I did a deal in Long Island. Long as New York, I can help you. But really, my expertise is in Brooklyn. The things that so we have the final walkthrough, we get to closing, and the things that we actually work with people on our end is I set you up, like I said, in our backend database, so you get listings through us. I manage your experience through our project management tool. So at every step of the way, you're getting resources and information pertaining to your where you are in the deal. So if we're doing the inspection, I'm going to give you a lot of resources on inspections. If we're making a budget for you, I have how to make a budget document. What's SEMA, what's a lot line window, all of these resources that I have so that people understand what the process is going to be like. So they have their expectations are met and it's less stressful. It is a stressful process. The thing that our goal is really to make it as less stressful as possible for you and go as smooth as possible by preparing you for the experience. Because this is it's a life-changing experience for most people. It's a lot of money. And it's one of the biggest decisions you'll make because you're committed. You have to usually live where, if you're not buying it for investment, you have to live in this place for, 4 to 5 years. And, if a co-op, you're not going to be able to rent it out. So you physically have to be there. Condo, you can go live somewhere else if you can get the rent to cover your mortgage. The other things that we hand out, after this, like I said, I'm going to give you our home buyer handbook. And manage all of your scheduling and showings. Up for Q, we do have some questions in the chat that we're going to get to. So I think that's it. I don't think I missed anything. I'm going over the process. So I am going to open up for questions. I'm going to change this so I can see everybody. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Can't see people's faces during the presentation because I get distracted. So I have to just look at me and Rashida and Lisa, that people know. So I'm going to go to the chat and look and see what people ask. Anonymous question. Does any of the presenters have experience with NACA mortgage program? I'm going to go with Lisa. Do you have any experience with NACA? Or Rashida? I would have to Google it. I think that's a program for vets. Is that right? Person asking?
It's NACA, N-A-C-A. Yes, I've had clients that have used that program. Typically, you have to go through their kind of like vetting program, and then they'll give you a grant, or they give you a grant towards your closing costs, and sometimes they'll even give you extra amount for that. But it's definitely a program you have to go through them. They have actually also NACA attorneys that sometimes they require you that you use them as well. And so I had a client that recently, I was a seller's attorney, and the buyer was going through that program because they do definitely have attorneys that they actually require you to go through if you're doing a NACA loan.
Yeah, we don't do NACA loans. We do income restricted properties. Typically condos, not co-ops. I'm doing an income restricted condo in New Jersey right now. So, I do those, but HDFC are a little tricky. Those are income restricted co-ops in the city, primarily. I'm in Brooklyn and New York. I'm happy if that's the route you want to go to give you some advice, but there are specific lenders that can do those.
And I definitely have represented lots of clients that have purchased HDFC buildings in the past. I actually I'm an attorney for a co-op a co-op attorney for an HDFC building. So if anyone has specific questions about HDFC buildings, definitely reach out to me, because they definitely have their own quirks in regard to things that you need to know as far as income, selling, if you eventually want to sell, and then coming into the building, and then just kind of closing costs and things like that. But there are those different types of programs as well. But the HDFC buildings are kind of like a niche in New York, in Brooklyn, in the city. Not so much, I haven't seen any in kind of like Queens or the Bronx, but I've definitely seen HDFC buildings in both Manhattan and Brooklyn, and have represented clients in those type of properties.
The biggest challenge I always find with HDFC is the building financials, is that a lot of them just have challenging financials because of the status of the, some of the homeowners, they're not being able to pay their HOA fees.
I would say now they're getting a lot better.
Well, that's good to
Because
hear.
it has, definitely helped them. And I think the boards are getting a little bit more savvy with the building. So I would say it's not, the financials are still able. It's more about the income guidelines. A lot of times they actually approve you prior to you even your offer being accepted for certain buildings. So they have those that you have to be approved by the board first, then your offer is accepted, then you get your mortgage. Others that you still go through the regular route of getting into contract, getting approval, doing due diligence and things like that. But they're getting better with the finances. Not all of them, but they are getting better.
Shari asked, I think that's how you pronounce your name, I'm sorry, if I've put in 3 offers and in condos in Brooklyn, and I was outbid by all cash offers all 3 times, is this normal? And because of the market we're in right now, it has been challenging for people that are putting in traditional financing for very competitive listings. So if you're looking at things that a lot of other people are interested in, you're gonna have a lot of competition, things that are slightly under market that check all those boxes, that it's in a really desirable neighborhood. You're gonna have a lot of competition, and people have access to those funds. And they might not be actually paying all cash, but they're putting in an offer that doesn't have financing contingency. So that means if they can't get a loan, they would pay all cash for it, and then probably refinance down the line, because right now money's so cheap. I feel like if you were an all cash buyer, why would you put in why would you put all your cash into housing where there's gonna be a lot higher return in another market? So financing is something that people are still doing. But I would say that, Sheriff, if you want to speak directly about your specific situation, if you don't have a broker, that might be one of the issues. Or you don't have the right broker guiding you, there's a couple things I tell people advice on putting in offers. Be the first person to put in an offer, write an amazing cover letter, try to take other barriers. If you can't do financing, other things off the table, like if you're buying something as is, so you don't need an inspection, so don't make your offer contingent on inspection. So there are things that can make you look more desirable in this market, but it's a very competitive market right now. I'd be interested to hear more of the details of the properties you're putting offers in if you want to take yourself off mute. But somebody's asking, what is the difference between regular condo and income restricted property condo? Sheeta, you're the HDFC expert.
Yeah, so that's really, it's kind of self-explanatory. A regular condominium, you don't have any restrictions regarding your income. So with HDFC, and HDFC are really for co-ops, not really condos. So I don't believe there's any HDFC condos. There's lots of HDFC co-ops. For condo, I haven't really seen any income restrictions unless you're buying kind of the affordable housing ones, where you have to, in those situations, and once again, it's based on your income for you to get a unit in those type of buildings, and it's always based on your income. And typically when they're looking at it, a lot of people with the lottery, you'll put in your application and hopefully get through that lottery. And then when you get approved, it has to be your income at that time. So sometimes your income changes, and that's why there's this whole thing about really kind of this lottery and getting the condos, if you're looking at condos that have income restrictions in order to get into kind of a lottery building. If you're looking at HDFC buildings with our co-ops, some of the differences that there's typically a big flip tax because they don't want you to turn over the units. So a portion of it goes to the co-op. So when you look to sell, that's something you should be aware of because you're not getting a lot of your profit that you think you may get. And also I said you have the income restrictions, and it's really just the income at that time. So your income can increase after you become a unit owner. It's just that when you purchase it, you have to meet that restrictions.
Well, and also with both the condo and co-op income restrictions, there's also a lot of income restrictions, and there's a lot of restrictions in terms of how you sell. So in terms of if you can sell the property, how much you can sell the property for. Typically with income restricted condos, you can't, they have it fixed as to the walk away money you can have if you sell it. They have rules about if a family member could move in. I mean, it really what they're meant for are people on restricted income. So, you know, the deal I'm doing is someone that's on a social security pension, restricted income. You know, they have a very set amount of money they can use. I would say if you're like a young person and you're looking in, you know, Brooklyn and the city, like you should probably, you know, look larger than that, because there are probably, first of all, you're probably making a good chunk of, you know, more money than some of the income restrictions. And second of all, it's like, as Rashida, it's a very lengthy process. It's not easy. And I say that when we all know that buying New York real estate is not easy in general. So, you know, it has a lot more restrictions than if you bought a straight up condo or co-op.
And they're not really in this market. There are market
Right.
restrictions to them. So you're never going to see like market profit like you would with you buying a free market property like a co-op or condo. There really are specifically for that, you know, people that are okay with not making a profit on real estate and not seeing the appreciation you would with other types of properties. And that's part of banking your equity and why we encourage people on a personal level to buy real estate. HDFCs and other income restricted properties don't let you do that. They offer you stability. They offer you a cheap way to stay in the city, but they're not building equity for you in your home like you would if, in another type of property. And, you know, you can also get into a rent stabilized apartment and have the same thing and then do other things with your cash assets instead of buying something if you got into a rent stabilized, which there are apparently a lot of those in the market right now because people have left the city and all them people that tolerated living in a rent stabilized apartment and making those concessions have decided they're done with it and they're coming back to market, which is really great.
I would say also, if you're looking at kind of the income restrictions, and even if you're looking at houses as well, because they do have like certain programs where I've had clients, it's more long-term. So if you're thinking about you're going to live there for 10 years or, you know, 5 to 10 or longer years, that's kind of also, you're not looking to move out, because a lot of times if you're getting a grant, you have to live there for a certain amount of years and then the grant is forgivable. But if you move out earlier, then they give a percentage, you have to pay them back. So always, if you're looking at any of these type of properties, just think really about your long-term goals and how long you're really thinking about staying in that property. It should be definitely something that you're looking at for, I would say at minimum, even if things may change, maybe 10 years, because a lot of times they do have a cap on how long you have to live there before they'll forgive some of the grants that they give, whether it's through NACA, whether it's through some of the programs with houses where they give you grants. I forgot what they call the type of mortgages, but they consider it a mortgage, but it's really a forgivable loan if you live in the property for a certain amount of years.
We have another question about if more inventory is going to come to the market. So I'm about to list some apartments. It's taken a little bit longer, I think, for people to make the decision to, or, you know, they rented their space out. And so they were waiting for their tenants to leave. I'm going to list 2 studios in Park Slope, a studio in downtown Brooklyn, and then a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Prospect Heights, Grand Army Plaza. So I think that there will be, you know, over the next month, a surge in some inventory, just because I'm seeing it come to my plate, and we've been really focused on buyers. And I know that it has been very competitive out there because there's been so many buyers in the market. But I think that, you know, they've really moved some of the inventory, and that's why some more will come available. But I think there'll be definitely a slowdown, as there always is in August, and then it'll pick things up again in September. The good thing is, though, I think interest rates are going to stay around this range for a little bit. Lisa, do you want to, I mean, people are just worried about, you know, 6 months from now, what it's going to look like, but I don't see it shooting up to 4% over, you know, the next year.
So So this is where we are with rates. It has been a crazy year where rates have been so ridiculously low. Rates are still low. The market has been pretty stable. I do think that this is like the year to buy. I don't think rates, and again, I say this as a caveat that I say with all of my borrowers. I wish I had a magic ball that I could tell you what the rates are going to be like in a month or 2 months or 3 months. But unfortunately, I don't have that power. I do stay on top of the market daily and even hourly when it's a volatile market to know what's going on. But I do think that a year from now, rates are going to be higher. I think that this is sort of the year for people to really think about buying, if they can. And if they can't, then they can't. But I think that, a year from now, we might be returning to the kind of rates we saw 3 or 4 years ago. But I think it's going to be good rates for the next year for sure. That's what it's looking like. And again, the market's been really, really stable recently, which is really good. A stable market means that there's not a whole lot of volatility, which means rates are staying sort of like in the low threes, give or take, depending on what you're looking at, which is fantastic. And yeah, now's really the time to pounce, I would say, because in a year from now, things might be a little different. The other thing I'll say about rate is obviously everybody always wants the lowest rate. I want the lowest rate, so I totally get it. But you also have to think about your actual monthly payment. Like sometimes, I had a borrower who was like fixated on a rate, that rates creeped up a little bit and she couldn't get it. But I explained to her that the difference in payment was $15 a month. So you want a good rate, but you also want to close, and you want to make sure that the terms of the program are what you need for your loan to feel comfortable. So that's all part of the conversation we all have.
So I think that's the end of our questions. I agree on the rate thing. I think that, when I bought my house in 2010, I was paying 5.25. So anybody that's paying the 3, you're very, very lucky. I'm paying 4.25 now because I refied a couple years ago, but the difference right now, I can't do the refi again to get these great rates that everybody's getting. So please don't be obsessed with the rates. It's a great time to buy. If you buy in the next year, you're probably still in a really great position. And I do think inventory is going to come back up. So just keep looking out there. So I feel bad. Don't be discouraged, Shari. And again, if that's the end of our presentation and our questions, and if you want to get in touch with us and set up a private call to talk about your specific situation, any of us will make ourselves available to you for free, no charge. We just want to be a resource for you and really help you get this process started. It's like an very exciting time for us to be working with so many great people that are just really interested in real estate right now and interested in making New York their home for a long time and being invested in our community, which just so wonderful for me. And so I really, really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today and learn more about buying in Brooklyn or anywhere. And Rashida, Lisa, do you want to add anything?
Just want to say once again, continue your search, just be prepared, call on the professionals, and get ready for this roller coaster, as I say, of real estate.
And yeah, I'll just add to that. It's definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint, but it's really exciting at the end of the day when you have a place that is yours. And I really, really, really love working with the team here. And like, we all have your back, and that's really important because this is not going to be easy, but it's going to be, what I tell people is it's going to be as painless as possible. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be as painless as possible. So, definitely talk to all 3 of us, and, don't be scared about trying to get a mortgage. I think it's all about having that conversation and seeing what's possible.
Yeah. And starting now, if you don't think you're going to buy for a year, that is okay. Just start the process now. Talk to me, talk to Lisa, get it going, have a plan and action plan. If like this is a real goal of yours, just like anything, you need to have an action plan. And I'm happy to work. My client that I worked with the longest took 5 years for them to actually buy something. but it was such a joyous day when it actually happened. I just over the moon that we finally got there because we had started this process so long ago. So do not feel like intimidated that you can't do it tomorrow. You can do it next year. You can do it in 2 years. Let us help and guide you to get there. Because if we all work together, we're going to make it happen for you. So thank you all so much. I love all the compliments in the chat, and I will hopefully talk to some of you soon, and good luck with your search. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.